Hi everyone, welcome to episode 93 of the ITSM crowd. Can't believe it's been this many. Today I am joined by a fabulous guest, Paul Wilkinson, and I always remember the first time that I properly met Paul, which was when we were both presenting at a conference up in Edinburgh. And Paul presented after me. So I did my session and I was talking about all these amazing new things that are coming in IT, and Abashi's happening and DevOps happening and this and that. And isn't it great? There's all these new ways of working. And then Paul came after me and basically destroyed my dreams and said, out of everybody in this room, who's actually delivered any lasting change in their organization? And no hands went up. So it was a very interesting juxtaposition of sessions there, I think, and it made me reflect on what does actually change. So Paul's very kindly agreed to come and chat to us today and give us a bit of a retrospective as he reaches the end of a long, illustrious career in service management. So I guess, Paul, first, if I can just ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your career, where you've worked, and just who you are.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I see we've got 30 minutes scheduled to talk about 40 years worth of experience. And I thought, how are we going to fill 30 minutes? I'm only going to need about 10 minutes to say what I know. But Paul Wilkinson, I'm from Gaming Works. I've been in IT for 40 odd years. I started off as a computer operator, system manager. I was even a dump cracker at one stage, and then I worked at data center manager. So I've done a whole load of IT jobs, and I switched across into that scary world of consulting. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. And I became an ITIL consultant and probably applied every single worst practice you can think of in applying ITIL, which sort of made me realize there's a lot more to just getting a certificate and thinking you know how to do this stuff. So I became an ITIL consultant. I became an ITIL author as well. I was in the architect team for ITIL practitioner. And 17 years ago, we started Gaming Works to develop business simulation games. Because we saw that people are struggling so much translating all this certificates and theory into practice. And the only time they get to practice is in a real environment without any coaching. They suddenly go back thinking they know what to do, like I did. And you get all the pain, stress, frustration, and it doesn't work. So we thought, how can we actually build something that's more hands-on, practical, in a safe way to let people try to practice ITIL? Yeah, what is a priority mechanism? How does that work? How does change impact assessment work? So we built business simulation games. The first one was Apollo 13. And since then, we built the Challenge of Egypt for Prince 2. We built Grab a Pizza for Business IT. And now we've got Mars Lander for ITIL 4. And we've been doing these games for the last 17 years, all around the world. So I've been lucky enough to travel all around the world. And we've worked with small, medium, and the largest companies in the world doing these simulation games. And the benefit it gives you is I'm not smart at all, but when you actually get to do these workshops with thousands of organizations, you gather so much research information about what are people struggling with? What are the common things we're all struggling with across the world? And that's what I hope to share a little bit of today.
Fantastic. And I think recently, so I've done simulations a long time ago, but recently we did the online simulation that you've developed. You showed us that with our team, and it is amazing. I think, as somebody who delivers training, having that at the end of a training course is a hugely powerful thing to give people that safe place to kind of play with the ideas that they've learned. Because like you said, you do an ITIL foundation, you go back to work and you're doing it by the book, and it's not right. And if you can have a play around with that, then it's fantastic. So yeah, the simulations are absolutely brilliant. So I guess kind of looking back on that 40-year career, really the things I wanted to talk about today are what's changed, because if we look at it from an industry perspective, there's been a huge amount of change with things like the rise of DevOps, agile ways of working. What are the big changes that stand out for you in in your career, in your space?
Yeah, that's a good. You said you were going to trigger me with this, so I actually wrote down some notes. I've got a few notes here to think. I saw three big shifts take place. Now, the first big shift that took place was when I started, it was all about technology. I was the VME expert. I was a technology expert. I mean, hey, if things went down on the weekend, I was the only one to fix it. I come in on Monday morning, it's a hero. Technology was what we did. Then I was introduced to ITIL and I suddenly realized, oh, it's all about processes. Process, that's what it's all about. And I designed, like many other consultants, books of theoretical processes that nobody used, nobody understood. They were far too bureaucratic. They didn't serve any purpose. Then I shifted and understood, oh, it's all about services. That's what it's all about, services and service management. So we built catalogs and we built service level agreements without talking to users at all. And so that became the focus. So this took me about 20 years. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, it's not about the services and the processes, it's about performance. And that's when ITIL was talking about the 4 Ps. And I said, it's not the 4 Ps, people, process, product, partner. It's 5 Ps. The 5th one is performance. What is the value and outcomes we're trying to achieve? So then I realized we've got to shift from that service to value. Then I realized finally it's all about people. And that was a shift towards attitude, behavior, culture. This book I wrote with Brian Johnson in 1998.
I've got a copy of that.
Yeah. That was republished again in 2005. Service Management from Hell. And then in 2006, I think, we produced this.
Yep.
Now, all of those ABC worst practice cards and cartoons in this set were back in 1998 and 2005. And now, still exactly the same. So I realized, okay, we've got to shift towards people. And now, finally, what I've seen is this shift towards values and principles. And that touches upon what you said. Lean suddenly appeared, Agile's appeared, DevOps has appeared, ITIL 4 has appeared. They've all got principles. And these principles are the glue that should bind us together if we can translate them into behaviors. So that's one shift, going from technology to process to service to value to action, principles and the importance of people. The next shift is, as you said, we were so busy in our silo of ITIL version 1, version 2, version 2011, we were so busy in our own little silo that suddenly these other silos started coming up with things like Agile and DevOps and Lean. That's changed. We've developed a lot of really good new practices. And suddenly ITIL was out of date. It was no longer popular. Everybody hated ITIL. I went to a DevOps conference in America and 2,000 people stood up and cheered, actually stood up and cheered.
Wow.
When Osgreen said, let's get rid of change management and ITIL. Everybody clapped. I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, what have we done?
You shouldn't have worn my ITIL t-shirt.
So then ITIL 4 came along. Quite rightly, we got to make it still relevant and fit for purpose. So that was another shift that took place. So one shift was technology through to value and the rest. The second shift was these frameworks. And the third shift, which is the most important, this is the most exciting time ever to be in IT. This is it. IT is the most strategic capability in an organization at the moment with digital transformation, digital disruption, artificial intelligence, it's all happening. This is brilliant. We are a strategic capability. That's the biggest shift that's taken place. So these are massive changes and it's only going to get better for IT. But that brings us on to your second part of the question, what hasn't changed?
Yes.
And that, unfortunately, is where I see the biggest challenges we have. And one of the biggest things that hasn't changed is the attitude, behavior, culture. Still, we've got the same attitude. Still, this is the #1 scoring card worldwide every time we do an ABC workshop. We've done these workshops with more than 4,000 organizations around the world. I've lost count. I don't keep track of it anymore. And the top scoring card was IT has too little understanding of business impact and priority.
Wow.
Now, you shared a blog, I think, in the chat function or in the introduction. I wrote a recent blog and I analysed the state of DevOps, the state of Agile, Value Stream Consortium report, Boston Consulting report, McKinsey report. I analysed all of these reports to say, why is transformation failing? And I summarised it into 5 key areas. And the first area was this: strategic fit. Every single one of those reports said as well, we don't understand enough about the business, and we don't make the fit between what we do with business strategic goals. And at the same time, the business doesn't govern IT effectively. So this is a two-way thing. And it brings us back to that business IT alignment, which has been a problem ever since I began in my career. 40 years ago, my shift manager said to me, business IT alignment. Even then, I said, what are you talking about? He said, we reset and reload and reboot the systems whenever we want to. We don't understand that the business users use this stuff. So we need to align better with the business timing. When can we reboot the system? So even back then, business IT alignment was an issue. And 40 years later, here we are, still the same.
Yeah.
So that's one big thing that has changed, or rather hasn't changed. And the second of those big challenges in all of the reports I analysed was also continual improvement.
Okay.
There's still not enough feedback, continual improvement. As ITIL 4's introduced continual improvement and progress iteratively with feedback. In our surveys around the world, again with thousands of organisations and all the conferences, I actually checked. I went through my conferences. I presented to more than 250,000 people around the world.
That's
and
amazing.
Every time I asked, how many of you doing CSI? And about 50, 60% of the hands go up. And then I say, no, wait a minute. How many of you doing CSI strategic to operational, left to right as a core capability? Less than 5% of the hands go up. So basically, we're trying to implement Agile, Lean, DevOps, and ITIL, but you can't implement them. This is a continual, ongoing alignment with changing businesses. So CSI has got to be a core capability. And again,
do you think the concept of digital transformation is unhelpful in this context? Because that's quite often treated like a project that needs to be finished.
It is. It's unhelpful because nobody knows what it means. That's another thing we're good at in IT. We're very good at developing new buzzwords.
Yes, we are.
Buzzword bingo. And our new buzzword to give us credibility and relevance in the world is digital transformation. Another blog I recently wrote, I think it's in the one that you've shared as well, is the big problem is we don't know what transformation means. Transformation means change, modification, adaptation, loads of the words. Now, everybody's using digital transformation and they're all right. Reorganizing new processes, updating your IT systems, they're all forms of transformation. So the big problem we got was you don't know what it means. And the next problem, as you quite rightly say, everybody thinks transformation is a step from A to B.
Yes.
And it's not, because we're in this world now of continually rapid change. Emerging technology changes so fast. New business models and new businesses emerge from nowhere, disrupting everything. We can't have 5-year strategic plans anymore. You can't even have a 1-year strategic plan anymore because things change so fast. That means we have to have the ability to change quickly as well, which is continual learning and improvement.
And Daniel Breston's just mentioned same things being tried with different buzzwords.
Yeah, it is.
We had when Daniel was on the ITSM crowd quite recently, also reflecting on his career, and he said that DevOps, Agile, it's all pretty much the same thing with a different title, which was a bold statement, but has some truth in it.
It does really, when you actually put it down to basics. It's how can we actually use IT to deliver business value? And businesses changed their propositions. It used to be IT was just a supporter, and then it was an enabler, and now it's a differentiator. So always the way that IT is becoming more powerful it becomes a more powerful instrument for businesses. And that's what it's always been ever since the beginning. Use the latest emerging IT to improve business capabilities. That's all it's about.
Yep.
And that means, okay, what we used to do was just keep IT running. So we needed things like ITIL. Then suddenly applications were there for marketing and sales and could actually sell products. So we needed to improve it. And then business change happened so fast. So we needed things like Agile and DevOps. So we're continually just developing new ways of doing what we're always doing. How can we make IT fit with the business needs?
And why do we have this huge gulf between IT and the business? Because I guess you hear similar conversations, you know, finance doesn't understand our priorities, procurement won't help us get the contracts we need, but it seems to be much more exaggerated in terms of IT in the business, that they almost exist like different organizations. And where's that come from?
I think that comes from the fact that IT really did used to be just a support function. So it was never in the boardroom. It was never in the management team. Finance, logistics, sales, they had IT and they'd shout at IT, do this for me, do this for me. So IT was all a supporting thing. Then IT started becoming more important and more strategic, but we're still not in the boardroom. We never got in the boardroom. We never actually came in the decision making. So we're always seen as this thing that costs an awful lot of money, keeps breaking down, and is getting in the way. And now, as I say, it's shifted to becoming a strategic capability. If we're not in the boardroom and we're not part of shaping the strategic decisions and quickly understanding what they are, then we're never going to get it. But the big problem is we don't have the trust and credibility to be seen as that strategic partner.
Yes.
And that brings us back to one of the things I mentioned. So long as we've still got these attitude, behavior, culture issues, we don't understand business impact and priority. The top card for the last 20 years in a row, every single year. If we don't understand this, then quite rightly, the business doesn't trust us. We're not credible because we don't show that we understand them. And this was another tip I gave, and it's still a relevant tip, and I give it now, is send every single person in IT into the business for a day.
Yes.
Let them sit down with the user for one whole day and understand how they use it. And think in terms of ITIL, definition of a service, value, outcomes, costs, and risks. Sit down and say, how does what we do save cost? How does what we do when it breaks down waste cost? How does what we do support you in getting your business outcomes? And ask those questions and you'll get a massive amount of understanding of the business. Then send them back into IT to say, present what you found. And now let's start putting that into continual improvement. What can we do better to align more with the business? But we don't do that. How many IT people have even met a user? Another problem. Obviously, it's another problem. I was a system manager. I was the shift leader. I'd never seen a user. I hated them. The only thing they did is they'd keep asking us to fix broken printers when we wanted to build flashy front end things and sexy toys. So a lot of IT people come straight into the IT world thinking they're IT, not realizing, no, you're part of the business. You've got to understand the business.
So here's an interesting question then from Daniel. Has the COVID pandemic and IT's response to that helped increase the level of trust, do you think?
Certainly has. Because we had to respond real quick to get everybody online and getting Zoom and all the video conferencing stuff working. So that has increased our ability. It's increased our ability to respond to crisis. That's all. It hasn't increased our ability to say how good are we at innovating. All we did was we used what was already being talked about.
Yes.
We were already talking about maybe we need to go to more remote working. Maybe we need to use more Zoom and webinars. We were already talking about it. All that COVID has done is accelerated the uptake of that. But it hasn't necessarily accelerated the uptake of innovating with IT.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yasser, who's watching, has said COVID has created a new definition of IT. And Daniel says, okay. But how do you... how do you feel seeing the same story repeated for 20 years? How when the same card comes up, how do you feel as a professional and for our industry?
I feel really frustrated, and this is where we're now going to have an interesting discussion, I think. I've looked at what's causing it, and to me, it is the way we train people.
Mm-hmm.
We have been so busy on getting the certificate, getting ITIL Foundation certificate, getting the latest certificate. Oh, I'm an ITIL expert. Oh, look at me. I can see business cards where there are so many letters after the business card name, where people have got every single certificate possible. They can't even fit them on the business card. So we've created an industry where the certificate is something that's valuable. Okay, it's valuable because it shows you know the theory, but it doesn't say anything about your ability to apply the stuff.
Yep.
We've spent far too little effort in that. Okay, I suggested at one stage, ITIL change every single certificate to be called in theory. ITIL Foundation in theory, ITIL Expert in theory, ITIL Practitioner in theory.
Yep.
You can only translate that to in practice. You've done something, documented it, had a peer review, and show that you know how to use it and how you've used it to increase value, outcomes, costs, or risk. Otherwise, why the hell are we doing it? But unfortunately, that's going to cost far too much. And they said the feedback to me was it costs too much time and effort to do it. But it won't if you say the people doing the peer review are the people who've got ITIL expert certificates in theory, and it will help them get their practical certification by giving feedback to people who are submitting case studies. So we can actually get the industry to reinforce and control itself, but we don't do that. The frustration for me comes as well from this is I hit this and I went through every worst practice and I did them all, and I got involved with writing Planning to Implement Service Management, the first version.
Yep.
Nobody read it.
No.
And the reason they didn't read it, you don't need to read it to become an ITIL expert. So people would only read the books and theory and follow the courses to become an ITIL expert. They said, well, why should I do that? It adds no value to my ITIL expert. So you see, we're just so focused on the certificate rather than the same with the practitioner. The practitioner is hardly done. And here's one anecdote about the practitioner, and you can see I'm getting passionate and frustrated about this. I won't say which company it was, but I went to a very large company and I was having a meeting, and a girl came in. She was about 25. She'd been in the company for 6 months, come straight out of university, never seen IT. And she came into me and said, yes, I just got my ITIL practitioner exam. And I just put my hands up and said, I rest my case. Somebody that's never seen ITIL or IT can simply study and pass the ITIL practitioner exam. What value is the exam? So where's the in-course practicality? Show me what you can do. Show me you can apply it. And because we don't do that, that's probably why we're not solving a lot of these things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as a trainer, this is a frustration that we feel as well, because we've developed training courses in the past that have been more practical, have focused on a specific area, and they do not sell if there's no certificate at the end. And there's so many. I remember sitting in a workshop with when Axelos first came onto the scene, in sitting in a workshop with them, and one of the things that I was suggesting was applying simulation to the exams. So rather than having a multiple choice test that people went through, drop them into a scenario so that they can actually apply what they're doing. And it's a frustration because it's a supply and demand thing as well. The market wants certificates, and that's so I don't know the
agree.
answer.
I think I've thought about it, and I think it was an article I once wrote, and you were the only person that actually responded to it. talking about the certificates, and you pointed that out then as well. And really, if you look at it, we're now shifting towards value chains and value streams. That's the big change in the industry, and I think that's one of the most important ones for the future. Shifting from this process and silos to value streams.
Yeah.
The Value Stream Consortium, I suggest people look at it. They've just come out with their first inaugural report.
Okay.
Mick Kirsten, who wrote the book From Project to Product, got a $100 million investment.
Wow.
To set up the value stream management. So the whole world is shifting towards value streams, which I think is an exciting, necessary development for the future, which was one of the things you wanted to talk about.
Yep.
So if we look at value chains and value streams, we can never solve this problem, because if you look at the value stream of certification, you've got the IP owners that develop the ITIL content. They have to now tell people the certificate isn't what you're after. You need the practice. You need to. They've got to market that. Then you've got the ATOs and the training companies and the exam institutes that also say, nice, you've got the certificate, but you need to take it further.
Yeah.
But as long as they don't communicate that, you've then got the procurement departments. We want guaranteed pass rates when we send people to training.
Yeah.
Or you've got the procurement departments. We're only going to hire consultants. They've got an ITIL certificate. So we're going to send them to say, you've got to demonstrate the ability to use the stuff. And finally, you've got the people wanting the certificates. They're not interested in being able to show they can do it because nobody's asking for that.
No.
But they are interested in getting the certificate because when they apply for a job, it says, do you have the certificate? So we're all operating in our own little silos.
Yeah.
So we'll never solve this. We'll never, ever solve this until each of those silos says, hey, wait a minute, we're part of a value chain.
Yes.
And if we all agree, what are the common shared goals we're trying to realize, then we can collaborate to achieve that. So it's never going to happen. So I'll be retiring, and I think if I came back as a guest speaker in 5 years' time, I bet it will be exactly the same.
And that's... it's bleak. It is frustrating. And I guess one of the things that maybe feels a bit more positive to me is to look at something like DevOps, which is continually evolving, is very community driven, doesn't have the same focus on certification, but has a very strong focus on education and knowledge sharing. So it's not...
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That is the positive change that I've seen. Is you're right. I think the agile lean DevOps thinking and philosophy, getting back again to where I started off, we're in the age of principles now.
Yes.
What are called principles? Customer focused, customer driven, collaborative. Those things need to be the mindset and culture we create. And you're right, the DevOps and agile type things try to create the right culture. So that we can learn, thrive, grow, and continually learn and improve. And that's the shift we need to take. So that is the positive side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there has to be a positive side, I think. But we're already end of time, which is horrendous. So, I mean, from my perspective, just to say thank you as well for everything that you've done, because you have at times been a voice in the wilderness in IT, and it must have been very hard to keep pushing that message. So huge thank you, and Daniel saying thank you as well. But I think just any final thought that you want to leave people with,
I would say
any kind of tip that you would give to people as a final thought for today.
Yeah, the final thought, it's an easy one. I would say the final thought is read that blog that I gave you. Because in that blog, it gives links to all of those reports, state of Agile, state of DevOps, so the links are in there. So read it, look at all those links and find out what's going on. Read that blog because it gives you the 5 shared common areas. So you don't have to read all the research, you can see the 5 key areas and start focusing on solving those. And particular tip is look at value chains, value streams. That is going to be the future.
Yeah.
And why do I keep doing this? I guess I just like pain. I guess I just like banging my head against the brick wall. So That's the thing I've learned in 40 years, that it's okay to bang your head against the brick.
You'll have to find something painful to do in retirement.
Thanks for
Thank you
inviting
so
me.
much, Paul. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you to everybody who's been, you're very welcome. And thank you to everybody who's been with us in the comments as well. Really appreciate your input too. So huge thank you. We are still booking the guest for the next ITSM crowd, but we'll publish that as soon as that's done. So thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you on the next episode of the ITSM crowd. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Good luck.